Rain had been falling all afternoon, turning the old highway into a mirror of silver and gray. The sound of it mixed with the hum of an engine, deep, steady, and lonely. A black motorcycle cut through the drizzle like a shadow that had lost its shape. On it rode a man named Cole, his leather jacket soaked through, his eyes hidden behind dark glasses, though the light was fading fast. He wasn't running from the rain. He was running from his thoughts. For years, Cole had been the kind of man who kept moving. The kind of man who didn't look back. Once, he had a life, a small garage, friends who called him brother, someone who waited for him at home. But that life had burned away in one night of fire and sirens. Since then, he'd carried silence in his chest like an extra heartbeat. His world had become the road, endless, cold, and safe in its emptiness. The rain thickened, and the wind carried the smell of wet dirt and pine. Cole slowed near a bend where the trees leaned close to the road. That's when he saw it, a small, trembling shape at the edge of the asphalt. He almost missed it, just a blur of fur against the soaked grass. But something made him stop. He parked the bike, the sound of the engine dying into the hush of the rain. Under the dull glow of his headlight stood a dog, skinny, muddy, and limping. Its ribs pressed against its wet coat, and one ear hung low, torn from some old fight. It looked up at him with wide, frightened eyes. Cole crouched down slowly. The rain dripped from his gloves, the smell of gasoline and leather surrounding them both. The dog took a step back, whining softly. It wasn't just scared, it was exhausted. Maybe hurt. Maybe abandoned. He didn't speak. He simply took off one glove and stretched out his hand. For a long second, nothing happened. The rain tapped on his helmet, on the wet road, on the little creature trembling before him. Then the dog limped forward, cautious, desperate, and pressed its nose against his hand. Cole felt something shift inside him. Something he hadn't felt in years. Trust. Fragile, undeserved, but real. He lifted the dog carefully, wrapping it in his jacket. The creature didn't resist. Its body was shaking, but when he placed it against his chest, it settled with a small sigh, as if it finally found warmth again. Cole stood there for a moment, looking down the empty road, rain sliding off his face. He didn't have a plan, but he knew he couldn't just leave. The nearest town was miles away, a forgotten place called Miller's Creek. He'd passed through it before, one gas station, a diner, and a couple of motels with flickering neon signs. He turned the key, the engine roared, and he started toward it, the stray still pressed against him, hidden beneath his jacket like a secret he didn't want the world to take away. By the time he reached town, the rain had softened to mist. The streets were nearly empty, lights glowing through windows like small pieces of safety. He stopped near a diner, the kind that stayed open for truckers and night wanderers. He carried the dog inside, ignoring the few curious stares. The warmth hit them first, that and the smell of coffee and fried food. He sat in the corner booth, the dog lying across his lap on a towel one of the waitresses had handed him. Its breathing was uneven, but its eyes were open, tired, yet calm. That's when she appeared. A woman in her early 30s, wearing a blue scrub jacket under a raincoat, approached him from the counter. She had kind eyes, steady and observant, the kind that noticed more than people wanted her to. She smiled softly. "You brought him in from the storm," she said, her voice gentle. "I'm Nora. I volunteer at the rescue clinic down the road." Cole only nodded. His voice had always been rough, like gravel under boots. "Found him by the bend," he muttered. "Didn't think he'd make it." Nora knelt beside the booth, her hand brushing lightly over the dog's fur. "He's been out for a while," she said, almost to herself. "See the bruising on the paw? That's not new. Someone might have abandoned him." She looked up at Cole, her eyes softening. "You did a good thing." He shrugged, uncomfortable with praise. "Just didn't want him to die out there." Still, she smiled. Sometimes that's how healing starts. One life saving another. The words lingered. They hit something deep, something he didn't want to feel. She asked if he could bring the dog to the clinic, and he agreed without thinking. It was only a few blocks away, a small building with lights still on even though it was late. Inside, Nora worked quickly, gently cleaning the dog's wounds, wrapping its paw, whispering as she worked. Cole stood in the corner, watching the way she moved, calm, sure, kind. She treated every small injury with the same care someone would give to a child. When she finished, she looked at him. "He's going to be okay," she said softly. "He just needs food, warmth, and a little bit of love." Cole stared at the dog, now resting on a blanket. Something in him ached, the kind of ache that didn't come from loss, but from remembering what it meant to care. He asked, quietly, "What happens now?" She smiled faintly. "If no one claims him, he'll stay here until he finds a home. Unless," she paused. "You'd want to keep him?" Cole hesitated. He didn't know where home was anymore. But as he looked at the dog, the way it lifted its head, eyes half closed but fixed on him, the answer came from somewhere honest. "Yeah," he said. "Maybe I do." Nora smiled, and for the first time in years, Cole felt warmth that didn't come from whiskey or engines or the road. It came from something human, fragile, real, and quietly alive. Outside, the rain stopped completely, leaving the world washed and still. Cole stood by the clinic window, watching droplets slide down the glass. Behind him, Nora was cleaning up, humming softly to the dog. Her voice was low, soothing, the kind of sound that made silence feel less empty. Cole didn't turn around, but a small smile tugged at his lips. Maybe he hadn't just saved the dog. Maybe, without realizing it, he'd just started saving himself. The morning light crept through the blinds, touching the floor of the small clinic where Cole had dozed off in a chair. The dog, now named Rookie by Nora, was curled up beside him, breathing softly. The storm had passed, leaving behind a fragile peace that hung in the air like the scent of rain. Nora came in early, still wearing her scrubs under a worn denim jacket. She paused when she saw Cole, his head tilted back, arms crossed, the faintest hint of calm on his usually hard face. Rookie stirred, lifting his head, tail tapping once against Cole's boot. Cole woke up at the sound and blinked toward the window, disoriented for a second. "You stayed," Nora said with a quiet smile. He rubbed the back of his neck, his voice low. "Didn't want to leave him alone. Didn't feel right." Nora tilted her head slightly, studying him. "You know, most people drop a stray off and never come back. You must have a soft spot somewhere under all that leather." He gave a short, dry laugh. "Don't go spreading rumors." She chuckled and poured 2 coffees, handing him one. "You look like you could use this." He took it, the warmth steadying him. "Thanks." For a while, they didn't speak, just the hum of the clinic fridge, the occasional bark from the back, the quiet rhythm of 2 people comfortable in silence. Then Nora said softly, "You've been on the road a long time, haven't you?" Cole's jaw tightened a little. "How can you tell?" "The look," she said. "Like you're here, but part of you's still chasing something miles away." He didn't answer, but she was right. For years, he'd been chasing ghosts, the fire that took his garage, the loss of his brother, the guilt of not being there that night. Writing had been his escape, not his freedom. But sitting here, with a wounded dog at his feet and a woman who looked at him like he wasn't broken, something in him started to shift. Nora knelt beside Rookie, brushing her fingers through his fur. "He's got some fight left in him," she murmured. "But he needs time." Cole looked down at the little creature, seeing more of himself than he wanted to admit. "Yeah," he said. "Don't we all?" That afternoon, Nora asked if Cole could help fix the old van the clinic used for rescues. "It's been giving trouble for weeks," she said. "And I don't have the money to take it to a shop." He agreed, surprising himself. Working with his hands felt foreign after months on the road, but when he lifted the hood and smelled oil and rust, something familiar stirred inside him, a sense of purpose he thought he'd lost. Hours passed. Grease under his nails, sweat on his forehead, the sound of Nora laughing as Rookie wandered around with a small limp. It all felt like a different kind of music. When he finally got the van running again, Nora clapped her hands, cheering softly. "I don't believe it," she said. "You actually fixed it." He wiped his hands on a rag, smirking. "Guess I'm good for something after all." "You're good for a lot more than you think," she replied, her tone soft, sincere. He met her eyes for a moment. There was no pity there, just warmth. The kind that melted through the walls he'd built. Days turned into a week. Cole stayed longer than he planned. He helped Nora with small repairs, took Rookie on walks, even started eating breakfast at the diner again. He didn't talk much, but his silence began to feel less heavy. One evening, they sat outside the clinic after closing. The sun was low, the sky painted in orange and violet. Rookie lay between them, his head resting on Cole's boot. Nora broke the quiet. "You ever think about stopping?" Cole took a breath. "I used to have a place. A garage. My brother and I built it from scratch. We fixed bikes, cars, and anything that had wheels. One night, wiring went bad. Fire took it all. Took him too." His voice cracked slightly. "I was out riding. Came back to ashes. After that, stopping didn't feel like an option." Nora's eyes glistened, but she didn't reach for him, just listened. That was her gift. She let people speak without trying to fix them. "I'm sorry," she said softly. "No one should have to carry that alone." He stared at the fading horizon. "It's easier on the road. You don't have to explain yourself to the next town. But maybe," she said gently, "you don't have to keep running either." He looked at her, the dying sunlight catching her hair, her face calm, unguarded. She wasn't trying to save him. She was just there. And somehow, that was enough. That night, when Nora went inside, Cole stayed by the bike for a while. Rookie climbed onto his lap, tail thumping weakly. Cole scratched behind his ear, whispering, "Guess we found something worth stopping for, huh, buddy?" The dog barked softly, almost like he understood. A few weeks later, Cole helped Nora expand the clinic's storage room. The townsfolk started to notice him, the quiet biker who fixed engines and walked a little stray dog everywhere. One of them even offered him a small job repairing tractors on the edge of town. When Nora brought him the news, he smiled faintly. "So I'm staying, huh?" She grinned. "Looks like it." He looked around, at the clinic, at Rookie wagging his tail, at Nora standing there in the doorway. He'd spent years believing the road was the only place that wouldn't hurt him. But maybe home wasn't a place you escaped from. Maybe it was something you found by accident, in the rain, on a roadside, in the quiet kindness of a stranger. The night he finally took off his helmet for good, the stars were bright, and the town was silent. He stood beside Nora as Rookie slept at their feet. "You ever think about what brought you here?" she asked softly. Cole smiled faintly. "Yeah," he said. "A broken dog and a bad storm." She looked up at him, her eyes warm. Maybe it wasn't the dog who needed saving after all. He didn't reply, just reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her face. The touch was gentle, unsure, but real. For the first time in years, he wasn't running. The world felt still, and for once, that stillness didn't scare him. A single headlight glows in the distance, not moving away this time, but standing still, beside the warm lights of a small-town clinic. A man, a woman, and a dog, 3 souls who found one another when the world had almost given up on them.